Hello and welcome to the EDHREC room. This is a place for more casual discussion, and I'm Joey Schultz, joined as always by Matt Morgan. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, Joey. I figured out why dark is spelled with a K and not a C.
Why is that?
Well, you can't see in the dark, so
that's
made sense.
That's so good.
It only made sense.
It almost frustrates me how good you get me with these sometimes. I'm also joined by Dana Roach. How you doing, bud?
I have a trivia question for you here, Joey.
I'm afraid of what this is going to be, but go ahead. Hit me with it.
What have we had more of in the month of February? Bans or secret lair drops?
Ooh. That depends on the amount of time between when we recorded this and when it gets published.
That's a really good point.
Oh, man. Anyway, we're here just sort of chatting. We were kind of talking a little bit about basically our favorite play styles. I really love graveyard stuff. Matt loves the combat step. Dana loves doing his taxes while he plays. And we thought that honestly that kind of might be we wanted to dig in so much more to each other's strategies that we thought that there might be a potential that other folks want to hear a little bit more about what attracts us to each of those different pieces of gameplay as well. So Matt, we are actually starting this off with you because you're kind of our resident aggro player, so it seems fitting that we'd start off with you talking to us all about why you love the attack step so much. Why do you keep hitting me? Stop it, please.
Oh, yeah, you are correct. I'm the resident connoisseur of the combat step, as it were. And yeah, I just decided to attack you into submission and let's start this series, really.
Yeah, it could be a nice, fun series that we do of our signature styles. But also, maybe, ulterior motive, I can convince you while we're talking about your favorite style to stop hitting me.
That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen.
Well, okay, so what I guess draws you of the different commander options available to you when it comes to, there's graveyard stuff you can do, there's artifact synergies, there's enchantress stuff, there's so many different things that you could do in commander. What makes you drawn to this specific strategy first and foremost?
Well, I guess there's three main things that I like about kind of the stompy beatdown decks. I love being proactive. I love kind of being the one to initiate things, sitting around and just being the reactive player. There's more places to go wrong, and I am self-aware enough to know I'm not a fantastic Magic player. I'm okay. But I would like to minimize the chances for me to make the wrong decision. So being proactive, whether it's in Commander or any other format, being the aggressive, being the beatdown, as it were, it gives me less chances to make the wrong decision. So that's one of the big reasons. But another thing too is it puts pressure on other players. If you've watched our games at twitch.tv/EDHRECast, like my Valdeck deck, I bring it out fairly often, but that deck, it puts pressure on everyone else at the table to hurry up. You're not going to get 5 turns to set up. You're not going to get to, establish whatever you're trying to do. There are no turns off when you're at a table with Matt Morgan.
I'm really digging a lot of what you're saying there, especially the control elements. There are totally, I enjoy the odd counter spell here and there. But playing counter spells does have that risk of I need to know what to counter and when to sandbag these counter spells in case, player 3 over there ends up playing something worse than player 1. And there's a lot of, like you said, opportunities to go wrong there. I love that. But also, so I guess I love how much you know about yourself that you want to be the person who asks the question instead of responding to the question. That's really cool. But also the thing you said about there's never taking a turn off. Man, that's so frustratingly true. If I try to spend 6 mana on an enchantment that's not going to really affect the board, you will punish me for that. And it hurts.
I try. Well, and if you took Dana's Sphinx's deck. Dana, you've talked about the deck on the podcast. It's a control deck. It sits around, yes. It establishes the board. If you asked me to play that deck, we would have exact opposite results. I might win 1 in 20 games with that, whereas you have a pretty decent win percentage with that deck. The play style itself, you have played it enough and you understand control decks well enough that you can weigh out, okay, is this threat with what I have left in the deck? Do I need to answer this now? Can I wait a turn, etc.? I am not good at making those decisions. at all. So me being the one that says, here's something, answer it or die. Like I have found in Modern, in Legacy, in all the different formats that I've played, like that type of play styles where I have the most success and I enjoy winning. Like I'm not the most competitive person when it comes to Commander, but like I do enjoy winning. So putting myself in a position to win, I just find more enjoyment from that too.
Well, here's my observation on you and your playstyle.
Putting him on the couch.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out there for anybody in the future when we're at events that meets Matt. I want to see if you get this vibe too. There's an element of Matt that feels a lot like Tom Hanks in Big. Like he's a little kid in an adult body, and he has that like aura of kind of mischief and wonderment, and I don't quite know how to sum it up, but like there's a little bit of that little kid in you, Matt, and it comes out very much when you meet you in person. And looking at, take your Merryweather Light Duelist deck, for example, that looks like the deck that like a 12-year-old who first discovered Magic wants to make when he's a grown-up. But like it has that same sense of fun and enjoyment and delight when you first find Magic. As a kid, it's there in an adult deck for you.
Well, and that's why they call it like the joke name used to be like Green White Little Kid Aggro. Totally is true. Yeah. Because that was the first deck that, like when I got back into Magic, I saw Fleece Mane Lion. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I'm just gonna play value creatures and make them big and beat down. But yeah, it absolutely is just like, I enjoy putting creatures on the battlefield. I like putting the onus on whoever I'm playing against. Like, I'm going to do my thing. You have to answer it to do your thing. I've always enjoyed those types of just, let's not durdle. I don't want to play a 2-hour game. Plus, like, I guess the last point about these types of decks is like, games got to end.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like you can't have a week-long game and everybody just kind of like leaves. So somebody's got to end that game, and I would just prefer it to be me.
Fair enough. So you've mentioned Valduk, you've mentioned Miri. Is there any specific reason, I guess, why those expressions of aggro were the commanders that you were drawn more towards than others in the same color combinations, or in like other? I think you usually do kind of stick to. It tends to be like 2 or monocolor decks. If I'm recalling correctly, and you do really seem to like honing in on those specific ones. But like, I guess I'm also kind of curious why those specific ones. Is it just because they attack so much more easily than everyone else, or is there a uniqueness to them that you really wanted to creatively work through, or is it really just that you saw the opportunity for more damage than I could potentially deal with?
Well, so one of the big things that I really like about green-white decks in general, and like I kind of said, is like I like playing efficient creatures. I like playing something that's going to maybe have it in the battlefield effect, and then have bonuses a little bit later. I think that's kind of why I like playing creatures so much, is you're able to, with pretty much any creature you want to be playing in Commander anymore. Like there's an enter the battlefield effect, whether it's Reclamation Sage, whether it's Skyclave Apparition. Like there's so many different things that you can do with an enter the battlefield trigger. So you're getting some sort of quote unquote spell effect from that, but you're leaving a body around later that you can benefit from. So really, like, you're getting double the value almost, because you're getting that effect, but then you also have a creature that you can use to get souped up with Craterhoof Behemoth or Pathbreaker Ibex or something like that. So you're kind of getting double duty with a lot of these effects. And I've just always been kind of frugal, I guess. So like, if I can find a way to get extra value from something that I'm doing, why not do it in Magic too? And that's where my Miri deck especially, I almost am toying around with like, do I want to make it a Panharmonicon deck? I know blue-white is kind of the flicker colors, but like there are so many good ETB effects in green-white that like, why wouldn't I want to double a Craterhoof Behemoth? Why wouldn't I want to double the draw triggers from the Great Henge? Because that is a enter the battlefield ability. So like it's just fun to find all these interactions and all these things that I can just like keep multiplying off of. Like, would I like 2 Aura Shards triggers from my Llanowar Elf coming into play? Absolutely.
I think there's also a thing that kind of jumps out to me about the style that you encompass with these different decks. I keep coming back to Miri. It does seem to be like your very signature deck at this point, but like you were kind of the master of on-board tricks that I still can't respond to effectively. Like you'll slam down the Scavenging Ooze and you'll be like, what about it? Like I know what you can do with that, and it's so good. Even though it's like, it's not sneaky. I really enjoy that sneaky style. And you're just like, no, it is here. Or there's a Pathbreaker Ibex on the battlefield now. You have one turn to respond to this thing.
Yep.
And like, I know that. I see it coming. And yet you have still totally browbeaten us because you're putting us into this almost catch-22 of things that they're so efficient, even though we can see it coming. The onboard tricks are just so intense. And I think that's also, I don't know if I'm kind of rhapsodizing about this a little bit too, but like, it's just that I'm thinking about those tricksy styles. Like, I expect a control deck to be tricksy. So when it is tricksy, I'm like, well, yeah, it's a control deck. But when you are tricksy in an aggro deck, it makes those moments even more unexpected and potentially even more impactful, because those are not the types of tricks that I expect from an aggro deck the way that a control deck would do. And you just have a great way of doing that. It's all above the table. It's all right there in front of me, and it still is totally crushing. And that's just such an awesome tip for aggro players, I think.
Well, and I know, there was a game, I don't remember what game it was or what deck it was against of Dana's, but I had a Selfless Spirit on board, and he just kind of like sat there and was like, I mean, the Selfless Spirit is going to stop me from like any answer I have for the rest of your battlefield, like depends on the Selfless Spirit going away first. And like there are so many different ways that you can set that up where, you know, and like you said, Joey, like you're putting pressure on the battlefield. You're being very proactive. You're saying, here's what I'm doing, what do. But then also like that, like you said, it makes those tricky moments that you do happen to pull out all that much more impactful. Arachnogenesis has been probably an MVP in this deck because I build up a board, I swing, I knock somebody out of the game. But then like, oh, well, the crackback, I'm like, I don't care about the crackback because I have the best fog in the game, or I have a Teferi's protection. So like, I only play like 11 instants in the deck, but like, if they are incredibly powerful when I play them, like people don't see it coming because I've put so many resources on the board already. So like that's one thing that I've always enjoyed about my Valduk deck, and maybe not so much to this amount, but like Miri especially is just like chef's kiss when it comes to, okay, I'm going to do my thing a little bit. Now that I've done a little bit of that thing, how am I going to maximize it and make sure that like nobody else sees what I'm doing next coming?
And even if they do see it coming, like I'm looking through your list, and listeners, these links for Matt's deck lists will be in the description below. But like you've got Scoot Swarm in there, and it's just like, all right, did you find an answer? No? Well, it's going to keep happening. Like there will be more Scoot Swarms. Uranus the Indomitable is just like, hey, I've got like 12 mana free. Which of my creatures are you going to try and block? Because I'll pump them up with this ability, and there's not really much that you can do about it. It's just very impressive stuff that just because it's aggro doesn't mean that it's not still capable of some absolutely obnoxious trickery.
I mean, I think we found ourselves multiple times on the other end of that primal order clock, too, where you're like, well, I'm taking 6 damage a turn for the next 2 or 3 turns, that we need to solve that problem or we're all just dead.
Or Throne of the God Pharaoh. That's another one. I'm just like, Matt's only going to kill me with combat damage. And then he's like, I'm going to tap all my creatures for mana with some other whatever thing. And then here's a Throne of the God Pharaoh. I have 10 tapped creatures. And oh, I'm sorry about your life total there, bud. Like, it's just like, you still got so many other cool ways. And that's just like such a great lesson for me. I don't play a ton of aggro, but if I ever do dip into it, there's a lot to learn from these types of extra tricks.
Well, and that type of deck was actually why I wanted to build this deck originally. It was a Glare of Subdual where you can tap a creature to basically I would tap down all the other people. And I use Miri so that you can only attack me with one creature. Well, I'm going to use Miri to tap down your best creature. So you have to attack me with like a 2/2 and I don't care. That's how the deck originally started. And there were a bunch of like Convoke abilities in there, but now it's like Cryptolith Rite, and like I'm just going to turn things sideways for the most part. But then like Throne of the God Pharaoh is insane, but then like you have the Mana Dorks that turns into a Harvest Season and I get 6 lands. Like there's so many cards that just incidentally benefit. Like it's not a dedicated like tap down control deck, kind of like what it originally was. It's definitely more of a aggro deck, but like there's still cards that benefit that like I'm surprised don't see more. Like I know we we kind of were like, Harvest Season, nah. But like the more that I've played Harvest Season, the more I love it. The more that I play March of the Multitudes, oh, you only have 3 blockers? No, you have 6 blockers now. The more that I've delved into this deck, the more that I've grown to appreciate it. And like, yeah, Primal Order, like Dana, that was a challenge stats of yours. So really, you're killing yourself whenever I play this card.
that and the fact that I only have like 8 basics in my entire deck.
Well, that too. Yeah, it does speak to like those cards might not be good everywhere, but you've made them good here. That speaks to the level of expertise that you've got with stuff here. And I mean, even just Miri preventing people from being able to block efficiently is just like, that's an onboard trick, but like, good luck everybody else. This is such a house that you have to deal with. And like you mentioned, this is the thing that we all have to answer first before we are able to play. And that's really important. Like there are a whole bunch of us, I think, in Commander that can kind of get a little bit too laid back. Like, oh, I've got the first 6 turns to develop my strategy.
No,
I'm
you
sure
don't.
That no one's going to. And that's exactly it. You don't. You're like, yeah, math is for blockers. But guess what? You can't block.
Yeah. Well, and Miri just is such a great offensive and defensive tool. And I just... It stinks that like she's not that popular among Selesnya commanders. She's definitely got that pre-con effect of people see it as a cat deck, and that's what the stats on EDHREC show. But man, it is such a fun just combat control style of deck, and I could go on for so long about just all the fun little interactions that I've built into the deck. But yeah, it's terribly underrated, and I'm very glad that like I found this commander that just spoke to like the casual, like I'm just going to do these fun things to make me feel feelings. And if I could play a competitive deck, it would be something like this. But yeah, I'm just very glad Miri exists as a card, even though she is a cat. I'm a dog person, but
you found a cat that spoke to your inner Tom Hanks from Big.
There it is right there.